Welcome to the CFDA e-commerce and logistics series in collaboration with Getting It Global. I'm Josh Halpern, your host, also known as the VanBassador, and I'm here to share insights from leading experts and brands in the global e-commerce and logistics space. In this series, we'll walk you through some of the key topics and trends that fashion brands should consider as they build their global expansion strategy. Let's check it out. We're going to talk about three things. We're going to talk about content optimization, and we're going to take a little deep dive into domain, subdomain, and CCTLDs. What is that? Then we're going to talk about on-site experiences. How do you optimize that experience for your consumer? And then we're going to talk about the post-purchase experience, how to retain those customers through excessive obsession with customer service. Check it out right now with Kai Lee. Kai, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
Kai, I understand there are three options for how you structure your domains and subdomains across the globe. What are those three?
So subdomains, subfolder, and the CCTLDs. Subdomain is basically saying we normally have a URL structure of www.revolve.com. That subdomains, you're going to have cn.revolve.com, au.revolve.com, or something similar in that fashion. So basically, the subdomain signals a specific region. Subfolder is that you're still going to have your www.revolve.com, the whole structure, but however, you create another folder for a specific region. For example, let's say Australia, right? You have www.revolve.com/au/ or CA/. So that's basically signaling, that's everything under that subfolder is for Canada. And within which you could have multiple language variants. For example, you have /CA/EN for English, CA/FR for French. So you have two pair of subfolders within Canada to support that particular country. And the last one would be CCTLDs. The CCTLD is basically is a top level domain. So you instead of have fr.revolve.com, you basically have www.revolve.fr. So the whole domain is specifically for that country.
What's your recommendation? Because we get questions about this all over, and I think that everybody's kind of all over the place in terms of what they're trying to do, and I don't even know if people know exactly why they're doing what they're doing.
I think it gets to a technical debate that many practitioners, they have a different opinion. They favor one versus the other. So I'm not saying the one that I like the most would be the best solution out there. But in general, for the three different approaches, I can divide them into two broad categories. One is a CCTLD. The other one is basically subdomain and subfolder. The CCTLD, so the whole reason that we want to have this, have different structures is for the SEO purpose. Now, when we think about SEO, that there's a couple of things matters, right? One of the, in addition to everything you have on site for SEO optimization, that the backlinks also very important. The backlinks associated with a domain. For large companies, large retailers, that they have, enormous number of backlinks, they are able to afford to have different CCTLDs. That's why you look at a company like Amazon. They have amazon.cn, amazon.co.jp, UK, Germany. They have multiple different CCTLDs because they have plenty of backlinks to support that multiple different CCTLD to get enough backlink juice to support their SEO effort. But even for a company like Amazon, if you go to amazon.com and scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, you will see they actually list all their subdomains, all their different CCTLDs at the bottom page. Why do they do that? It's because they want to share the link juice, the power of Amazon.com to different CCTLDs. For smaller retailers, even though Revolve, we're probably worth $5 billion, but we have no comparison compared to the giant of Amazon. So I strictly prefer not to use CCTLD. By doing so, I combine all my backlink juice, regardless in what language, anywhere in the world, back to one single domain, revolve.com. The whole purpose here is to aggregate all the sources, the resources I have put them behind one single domain. So that's why I strictly prefer the .com, a single domain structure. Within the single domain structure, you will have a subdomain versus a subfolder. The biggest problem with probably you can also tell that I like subdomain better, but I like a subfolder better than subdomain. Because in a subdomain today, we are living in a world that's we have many different devices. For example, you have m.revolve.com. That basically signaling to Google, this is a mobile site. And when you prioritize the content for a mobile device, you should prioritize content under this particular subdomain. So the subdomain has been used for other purpose in addition to the ability that you can signal the search engine for a specific region. So I want to be very, very clear to the search engine that by using only the subfolders.
If you can't acquire a CCTLD, let's say because you can't set up an entity that's in China, which is my understanding, right? You can't do that without having an entity or having somebody representing you. Is that even important? Is that a barrier to entry?
No, I don't think that's important. I don't think that's a barrier of entry. The people recognize .com just as fine. So the value from a customer's perspective, the .com is just as important as .cn or a local top-level domain. Of course, I've also heard from company from overseas, for example, a company from Turkey, that they probably TR CCTLD is probably the value is less than the .com. So it's more important for them to go for .com than a local CCTLD.
Sure. But what about the firewall? I mean, does that have any implications if you're not using a CCTLD to get over the firewall, let's say in China?
Nope. Firewall has nothing to do with the CCTLD. The problem we see in firewalls in China, actually two separate issues. One is that there are a lot of pixels or domain being blocked by the firewall. So basically, what happened is that there are certain pixels that we have. For example, from Facebook pixels that though they're being blocked by the firewall, those pixels will never be able to load. That's what's causing the page load speed goes down. However, there's another set of issue. It's not related to the firewall at all. It's completely just because the bandwidth between China and outside and to the US is relatively small, and all the traffic has to go through there because of traffic congestion. That's also slow down the speed of your website. Neither of those has anything to do with CCTLDs.
So in theory, could you isolate, let's say, a revolve.cn, if this were the case, or whatever you want to say, and say anything off of that subdomain is hosted in China, for example, and also is optimized for that market?
Absolutely. We basically do that by IP detection. If we see the traffic coming from a Chinese IP, we will never load the Facebook pixel or any pixel that's being blocked by China. As a matter of fact, that if the traffic comes from China, we try to load as less pixel as possible.
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, let's transition now to on-site experiences.
So on-site experience, when I think about on-site experience, there's a couple of things really come important to mind. It's really a great segue into last conversation. You want to optimize page load speed. Right? CDN is obviously something you want to have. You want to be able to have your image that are very close to the customer, so the page can be loaded really quickly. Now we often forget a pixel. So the most pixels are placed by third-party vendors. A lot of them are smaller companies that they don't have servers around the world, and then those pixels would actually bog down the load speed of your pages. So one of the key things, every time I talk to a third-party vendor, one of the key questions I ask them is that, where do you have your data center? Where are your pixel being loaded? I want to make sure they have they're able to service us all around the world. So the pixel issue is particularly important in the checkout pipelines, where you want your pages to be loaded super fast. That you even at a certain point, you want to reduce the number of pixels to have less visibility of your data in order to gain the speed that to help conversion. The second thing is that I see important for on-site experience is price and the currency that you have. That you want to be able to price in local currency. You want your price to include duty and taxes to match local norm. For example, in most part of the world, Europe, UK, Australia, Asia, prices displayed is the final price that the customer are not used to see the taxes at the very end of checkout. We spend all this money in terms of marketing, customer retention, bring them all the way to checkout, and just because of sticker shock, they are surprised and then they left us. It's just not worth it. So that you want to make sure that you basically do what Romans do. You want to price your product a similar way as what the locals price their product. The last one, I cannot stress enough of it, is the local checkout experience. It's something that you really want to look into. You want to support popular payment options. You want to be able to deliver or calculate the expected delivery date. That will increase your conversion. You also want to let a customer know who will be last mile carriers, because some of them do have a brand reputation that will help you convert. Those are just most basic stuff that we have to do when we're thinking about going to a new market. And then there are more advanced version of it. There are certain retailers were able to even have very different checkout flow by different country. Some countries favor one-page checkout. There are other countries favors multiple step checkout, and a more advanced localization that you probably want to be able to understand which one works best for the market.
Thanks. I know this is a heavy topic. We've got a lot of extra content we'll put in here after the fact in some of the descriptions so that you can all follow along. But yes, thanks, Kai. That is the extremely beginner level optimization for your website on the on-site experiences. Now let's move to the last topic, the post-sales experience. What can you tell us about that?
When I think about post-sale experience, basically two things come to my mind. One is that we want feedbacks from the customer. Two is that we want retention. So you usually ask for reviews, review of your product, review of your service. So basically, you deliberately create a feedback loop for future improvement. At Revolve, we're a customer obsessed. That we, one of the early conversation I had with Josh is that I still read today every single negative review from our customer, every single one of them. The goal here is I really try to understand my customer, that so we can do better for the customers. Also the product reviews, and also will also help you for other customers to review the product. And then when we're talking about support, you want to have local support options. That local phone numbers, for example, Revolve, we have local phone number around the world. If you cannot afford that, at least provide a chat for the customer, so that you need to have some basic ways for a customer to reach you, and then we'll be able to communicate with you. That you want to be able to provide local return options. That you want to have the ability to refund the customer the exact amount that you charge. Because we're in a world that with currency fluctuation. If you charge a customer 100 Australian dollars, you want to be able to refund them $100 instead of refunding 98. Because if you refund 98, your relationship with this customer ends right here. If you are able to refund them 100% back, that there's a great possibility they may come back in the future to buy from you.
Let me just dive into that for people who are just hearing this for the first time. What Kai's referring to is, obviously, if you are not localizing your bank account, meaning you're not putting a bank account either yourself in a given market or more likely through an intermediary, there's a number of services out there that do this, you may be charging them one thing at day one, and then day 30 when they return it, that your dollar amount has now fluctuated in the currency, so they're actually not going to get the same amount in their local currency that they paid when they first bought the item. So again, that's a major customer service issue. It's also similar when you've got a product sitting in the checkout counter and waiting for them to come back and purchase it a few weeks later. And at that point where they come back, now the price has changed because you're not actually locking those prices in through website or bank localization. You're actually just flipping over whatever at a given time is the currency exchange rate. Is that accurate, Kai?
Precisely.
Okay.
Those are the things we actually don't think about, but it really matters to the customer.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So obviously it's hard for a lot of companies that are listening to this to say, well, I can whip up a chat bot that's, or a chat rather, that's globally ready, multilingual, symmetrical for time. But you're saying, could you use a chat bot versus virtual chat assistant versus actual people in your home office? Thoughts?
The bot definitely can cut off a lot of questions, will help you to increase productivity. Human is irreplaceable. You need to have a human behind it.
Yeah, which can be costly, but I presume there's services out there, obviously, that'll help you do this. But you've got to train them for your product category and your product SKU set, for example.
Absolutely.
Kylie, thanks so much for joining us again for website localization, ways to optimize your site to engage better with overseas consumers. We will see you soon.
Thanks for having me.